Totally. No, I'm the same way. I mean, it is passive aggressive in a way, but I am literally the same way that I'm not one to say no to things. And so, like, if someone wants me and it's an opportunity, it's like, I'm not really going to say no if you're convincing me I'm great for it. But then when something doesn't happen, you're like, I'm actually kind of happy. I totally understand. It makes sense. How was your BFF, Deandra, though, with this?
I think she was more upset than I am. I do not want to speak for her, or put words in her mouth. Um, but I think the show meant a lot more to her than it meant to me because of her history with it. She had been on since season 2, so she did 4 seasons, and that's, I mean, it when you're on the show and when it's showing and you're doing press and handling social media, it is all consuming. I mean, that is your life. And so, because I think of her longer history with the show, it meant more to her that it was being put on hold than me. I was like, oh, well, 1 season, whatever. But I think it hurt her a little more.
I mean, that's understandable. And you do think New York could have factored into this decision overall, like as a network?
Yeah. I mean, New York, like you said, the ratings are facts. They went down, and all of this stuff about racism, it's really funny. When I talked to producers about joining Housewives, there was no talk of race or anything like that, because that was back in 2019 that I had my interview with the producers of Real Housewives of Dallas. And then while we were in between filming, Brandy's video came out, and then the very first all cast event I filmed for, the producers are like, we want you to talk to Brandy about her video. And I'm like, that video was like months ago. Like, it's summer. That video came out like during winter. And they're like, talk to her about her video. And I was like, I don't want to talk to her about her video. They're like, you're going to talk to her about the video. And so here I go, my first appearance, and I'm having to address a racist video, and they're trying to do this thing between me and Brandy. Well, I never had a thing with Brandy. Still don't. Never had an issue with her. I mean, we had little tiffs here and there that you see.
Yeah.
Never a major issue, unlike my other castmate. Those were real issues.
Yeah. Right. No, I agree with that. And then do you think, look, I mean, you are the quintessential housewife. Like, you have the house, you have, listen, there's a checklist. Like, you have the closet, you have listen, the fact that you're a doctor, just like check that box. That's certainly not, bad. Do you think, like, you listen, Bravo is so great about diversity and inclusion on all their shows, like everything below deck. But do you think that you were cast specifically, not only, like, there's a lot of reasons, but in part because of this video, because they didn't let Brandy go? Do you know what I'm saying? And so it's like they let Leanne go, which, let's not even get into all of that. But like, do you think it was like, well, out of the diversity that we need to bring to the show? And I think I'm all for an integrated cast like Salt Lake. But do you think it's like, well, we have someone that checks all the boxes and you're Asian American, and we have this video, like, we have to address this? Like, do you think that was part of it?
I was cast before that video of Brandy resurfaced somehow.
Okay.
In like early 2020. I had my talks with the producers in December of 19. And although I had not signed my contract until a few months later, they basically said, we want you for the show back then. When Brandy's video resurfaced, and now they know that they sort of have an Asian housewife coming in, where they like, oh, yay, 2 more points for Tiffany. Maybe, sure. It certainly added to the story that they, wanted her and I to have this, argument or whatever.
Totally.
Yeah, but for the people who said that I was cast because of the video, that is incorrect. Did I get maybe 2 more points on Bravo's checklist when they rate housewives for being Asian? Maybe, and I'll take it. You know what I mean? Like,
I do.
I don't know what people are trying to insinuate there, but if I got 2 points for having a nice house and 3 points for having a nice closet and 1 more point for being Asian, then I'll take it.
4 points for being a doctor. 3 more points for having the family that you can bring. You know, you have the mom, the husband, the kids. Do your kids, like, are they aware that, like, okay, the cameras aren't here? You know, I mean, it was only 1 year. It's not like a lot of the housewives children that grew up on camera, or are they too young to understand, like, whether it was cameras and not cameras?
Yeah, they basically thought it was a one and done thing because that's always kind of how I framed it to them. So they're
Totally.
never like, oh, how come the cameras aren't around anymore? Like that's definitely not a question. You know, they were 5 at the time. So I'm like, do you guys remember when the cameras are around? And they're like, yeah, we remember. So they don't care one way or another.
It wasn't like they were like, wait, aren't those cameras here from now on or anything?
No, but I know that like some of the housewife children that are on for decade or, you know, like they're 5 when their mom started on Housewife and now they're 15. Like I think about that and I'm like, wow, those children sort of like grew up on TV, whatever problems they were dealing with, like, you know, hitting adolescence, like that probably was all shown on TV. And actually that was one of the reasons, you know, on my spreadsheet of whether or not to do another season again, it was actually in the negative pile. Like I did not want my children to grow up on TV. I wanted them to have like a nice, normal life.
And I think, like, if you grow up on TV, like, you do go through, it's like something you have no control over, and then like it's not there, and it's like, you know, we all lose our jobs. I mean, that's just how Housewives works, right? And then it's like, it is strange. Like, I would imagine children go through some type of withdrawal, good or bad.
Yeah, there should be a recovery group for children of housewives.
I think so. Maybe you and I can start that in our next careers. Did you want to show, like, say the show came back and, you know, you were a part of it, and did you want to show more of like your career? Like, did you want to bring like listen, we have Botched, we have lots of shows where cameras go into operating rooms. Would you want that to be part of it?
Yeah, one of the reasons that I felt like my time on Housewives wasn't great and was not really a fair representation of my life was because there was very little of my medical life in the show. And the reason for that was because that was in my contract. I was not allowed to say who my employer was. We were not allowed to film within X miles of my place of employment. I was allowed to say that I was a board certified anesthesiologist, and that's about it. So as far as filming in an operating room or, you know, showing the conversations that I have with my cancer patients before I take them back to the operating room, you know, visiting their families in the waiting room to let them know that their loved one is in the recovery room and everything went fine. None of that was shown and will never be shown because it's in my contract.
Was that because you wanted it in your contract, or Bravo, or your employer?
The latter.
Your employer. You're shaking your head, yes. I mean, that makes sense. It's the same thing like in New York City, like when a lot of like finance, like men and women just can't join the show. It's like they work for these hedge funds and these employers that are like, you cannot be on TV. It's not okay.
I mean, I understand that there is a certain amount of professionalism that these large companies would like for their employees to maintain. But I know myself very well. And I told them, you know, I'm not going to go on TV and do something crazy. Like it's just not in my blood. But, you know, I respected their wishes, which is not to speak of my employment with them. And so that's how it was. But sadly, then I think people missed out on a big chunk of my life. So I don't know, in the future, maybe there could be some sort of arrangement made where I am allowed to show that aspect of my career.